My name is Jeff McDougall. I'm with the Mozilla Foundation, and this is one of a series of presentations on who we are, what we do, and how we do it. In the last couple of presentations, we looked at understanding open and some strategies for implementing open projects. In this presentation, we're going to look at resourcing. How do you accountably put money and resources into the unknown? How do you put funding into something whose outcomes are not yet fully understood? We have this idea and this concept of funding in the nonprofit sector whereby you identify a set of deliverables, you calculate how much those deliverables are going to cost, and that's the size of the check that gets issued. And we've just sort of illustrated in the last few presentations that that doesn't actually marry to how the innovation process around technology and, quite honestly, most forms of project development actually take place. So how do we combine these things to our advantage? Well, the first thing that needs to happen is an understanding that the current model is broken. The way in which we believe that we fund deliverables and fund outcomes doesn't actually work. So let's have a look at how it usually happens and then compare that with how it might occur under an open model. The first thing that happens in any project is that somebody has an idea. So they develop a very clear and fixed plan on how that idea can be achieved. And of course, the first thing has gone wrong already. There's this very fuzzy idea and this very clear fixed plan on how that idea might be achieved. But this is the way things work. There isn't much choice in the matter. So the project gets initiated, and at first everything goes well. But then the first thing breaks. E doesn't work. But again, this is to be expected, so the team knuckles down and pulls off F. But by the time they get to G, they realize that G isn't actually G. G is this other thing called 17. And in order to get 17 to work, you really need to be able to build J and K. But of course, within the funding model and the budget, not enough money has been allowed for 17 to occur. But again, they're already this way through, they're past the halfway point, they need to get the project done, so they pull some all-nighters and they get 17 built. But as a result of the resource commitment required for 17, only half of H gets achieved, I doesn't get worked on at all, and everyone really wishes that there was enough money in the budget to pull off J. But this is what they have, so they launch, only to realize that no one in the community actually uses C and F. They didn't need to be built in the first place. B is actually twice as complex as everyone originally anticipated, and A and D could have been combined into a fish from the get-go. But this is the tool, this is the investment that's been made, so the community limps along for 2 years with this in place until you, as a funder, get an application across your desk to build a triangle. Because clearly the problem was that squares don't work. So what could have this looked like under an open approach? Well, we start with the same idea, but rather than building a fixed plan, we simply put in place a plan for one feature, A, and we float ideas for B, C, and D, and immediately we launch. Launching right away is the key. And this allows us to get community feedback into the project, letting us know what is and is not a good idea. While that community feedback's coming in, our team has continued to work and they get B done. But we find out through consultation that C is a really bad idea. And we also managed to find this group of Argentinians who've not only already built D, but also E and F. And they're willing to share those resources with us in return for access to A and B. So we go through a process of cleaning this up in development to build a nice clean system. And then we go through the process again, a second iteration. We launch ideas for G, H, and I, and the Argentinians commit to building J and 17. Our team gets G done, the Argentinians fail at J, but they get 17 achieved. Our community shows up again and tells us that I is a bad idea. And out of nowhere, this group of British university students shows up who've built H, but not just H, but H divided by fish. And everyone realizes that that new fish flavor means that A and B weren't as important as we originally thought they were. So of course this is pretty messy, but there are a few things to note. We still have time, we still have money, and most importantly, we have direct feedback from our community about what is actually useful. So we can build this, to great aplomb and great applause from everyone involved. So the issue is this. We know how to fund the mess on the left, but not the clean system on the right, the one that eventually proved useful. The process on the left seemed clean, and the process on the right seemed messy. But the one on the left, the result of the process on the left was messy. The resulting tool isn't particularly useful. It was very expensive to build, and it was process-driven. Whereas on the right, the result is clean, it's extremely useful, in fact it's being used from the beginning, It was cost-effective to pull off. Remember, we didn't have to pay for a lot of what's currently in place. And most importantly, it was community-driven, so the use of the tool was baked in from the beginning. People have a sense of ownership and dedication and commitment to what actually materialized. So the trick in this is to marry the funding model to the actual development model. If we're going to ask our project workers, our grantees, to engage in agile development methodology, we have to be willing to have some agility and flexibility and the room to fail on the funding side as well. We need to be agile, hands-on, and minimize process requirements. And in the next presentation, we're going to talk a bit about how we at Mozilla are putting that in place through an initiative we have called Drumbeat.